Welcome to the Fleet Legends interview series. We all know the fleet management industry is always evolving, but one constant remains: the immense value of wisdom gained through decades of experience. The Fleet Legends interview series, sponsored by Legend Fleet, captures and shares the expertise of seasoned fleet managers, industry pioneers, and dedicated leaders who've shaped the field over decades of dedication. Their stories preserve fleet wisdom, offering actionable advice, practical insights, and historical context for today's leaders and tomorrow's innovators. As Vice President of Content for Bobit, I'm Lauren Fletcher, and I'm thrilled to host this series. During my time writing about fleet, I know how crucial it is to ensure that the lessons learned by seasoned professionals continue to inform the future of our industry.
Creating a better day for the legends of the road with the non-slip van floors, protective interior liners, and full range of work van accessories. Trusted by major OEMs and fleets all across North America and Europe.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Sam Lamerato, whose career has been nothing short of legendary. Sam, can you share a little bit about your journey in fleet and what's brought you to where you are today?
Well, I believe my journey in fleet started years and years ago before getting into the fleet manager's position exactly. As a youngster, I was always interested in automotive, always interested, built go-karts, built mini bikes in my, teenage years. And then graduating from high school with some encouragement from my father and mother, went on to a very, very good institute to learn about fleet management and fleet overall, technicians as well. So with that, I'm married. I have three wonderful kids, a wife and three wonderful kids, and now they've gone off and got married, and we have great families. And we have 5 grandkids now as well. So my fleet, I've always been interested in fleet. And if you even speak with my wife or my kids when we're on vacation, they'll be looking at something interesting, and I'm over there checking out a dump truck, or I'm checking out a street sweeper that I've never seen before. Always trying to pick the minds of others, trying to be better. So that's my my interest in fleet. And again, always trying to help people with vehicles. I've had cars lined up in my driveway, trying to help people get their vehicles back on the road as well.
Can you give me a little bit of background on Public Fleet Advisors, what you're working on today?
Our Public Fleet Advisors series, we do actually on-site consulting and edit and auditing for fleets. We just finished a large project out in Ohio. Larry Campbell and myself have moved forward, and we have 5 programs planned this year across the United States, teaching everything from best practices of fleet operations. Not only best practices, but also being ethical and being competitive in your fleet operation, to stay competitive, so you're not going to be outsourced by your municipality possibly. And we bring fleets together on site visits. We just came back from Dakota County, Minnesota, and we had an excellent group there. We had over 50 people in attendance. And we do this with we have several sponsors that sponsor us to try to keep the cost of doing these programs low, so we can bring people in. And we even offer scholarships to some municipalities that had their training budgets slashed.
So, in your time, if you were to reflect back on your career so far, what are some of the most significant changes that you've seen in the fleet management industry?
Wow, there's many, many, many. I've been over 40 years as a fleet manager for the city. Well, not all 40 years, about 37 of those years. I worked there, and then, a few other years doing some contract work for them as well. But I remember starting off working for the city as an intern. I was an intern right out of while I was still going to school to be for fleet management and fleet technician work. Being an intern, they hired me. I remember making $3 an hour, and going in there, I wanted to, step lightly, because here I'm coming from a trained institute where these other folks, a lot of them learn by doing. I didn't want to step on any toes. Wanted to make sure that, I learned from them, as well as if possible, I could teach them a few techniques without ruffling too many feathers. And believe me, they had ways of doing things that were very beneficial, but there was other things that were coming into the technologies then that they had no clue of. So I had to, help them along. But I do remember back then just getting into it. You could go into work with a small toolbox with a dwell meter, a tachometer, a timing light, and a vacuum meter, and pretty much do a tune-up on a vehicle. Today, those don't really help you very much at all. I still have mine in the garage, and I haven't probably touched them for 20 years in the toolbox because they're just not needed. Today, you need all this very expensive diagnostic equipment to check and interrogate all these onboard computers that new cars have. So that's something that has really changed, and it continues to change. Every day now, you're hearing more and more about autonomous vehicles and vehicles that are going to be driving themselves down the road. Those things are so far advanced, and I'm very fortunate where I live in Michigan. I live 20 to 30 minutes away from GM, Ford, and Chrysler's world headquarters. So we see a lot of these vehicles running up and down our roads. Plus, you have access to talking with these engineers from these large manufacturers.
I mean, I'm sure you've got a ton of memorable experiences over your time, but is there something that really stands out to you in your career as fleet that really impacted your time, or a challenge that you faced that you really had to overcome?
Well, there's many things. The challenge I had, and I tell this during our sessions actually, when I was working at the city of Troy, Michigan. I started working there, and the fleet department wasn't really, a lot of people didn't like us. Let's just put it that way. We didn't get vehicles out and equipment out in a timely manner. A lot of it was because we had a small operation, a small shop, large pieces of equipment, somewhat dated pieces of equipment. So I wasn't completely convinced I was going to make a career there. But then things started to change. I went up for promotions. I started as a grade level entry service person. So I got to touch and work on every piece of equipment. Didn't last there long. I was promoted to a technician, or to a mechanic back then. From a mechanic, I was promoted shortly after to a heavy equipment mechanic, and then on up to a lead mechanic, more or less overseeing a shift, overseeing an operation. But again, my big thing was I wanted us to have more respect for our operation. You don't want to go to work and you're looked down at because your operation maybe isn't up to par. So even though we had some really good people working for us, we finally convinced management. They built us a brand new facility, a state-of-the-art facility back in mid 70s, late 70s, and things started to turn around. Then unfortunately, we had our fleet manager passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack. And then we've had a large void there for a few months. There was a posting put up for looking for a fleet manager, and it was posted not only internally, but nationwide. I have to credit my wife for pushing me to apply for that position. She said, if you're not going to be happy, you may not be happy working for the next person. Why not why not be that person? So I did apply for it. There were several others that applied for it from the city, and nationwide, others applied for it. I went for the interview, not knowing really what to expect in this interview from the board they had put together. Did the interview. My wife and I and some friends went on a fishing trip for a week in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, thinking I didn't have a snowball chance in hell of getting this position, because looking at the other applicants, I was by far the youngest. I was in my 20s yet when I applied for this position. Came back from our fishing trip. The public works director, who was a very, very well-known public works director, very stern public works director, and believed in being professional, which I believe in also. He called me into the office and asked me point blank, where have you been for the last week? I said, I was on a fishing trip with my family, with my wife and some friends. He goes, well, did you relax? I said, yes, I relaxed. Did you catch any fish? I said, yes, we did pretty well. Well, good. You have 24 hours. You're our top candidate in the selection of the fleet manager. you're a top candidate. We need your answer in 24 hours if you want to be selected and be our new fleet manager.
Wow.
24 hours. So I went home, talked it over with my wife, told her there's going to be some changes here because there's going to be some additional hours. And she was on board with it. At the time, we had 2 kids. They were on board with it, and we moved forward. And since then, I had some excellent help from people out in the field on learning the procedures, learning the process, learning what you had to do. The public works director was an excellent mentor, and we progressed from there. And I made sure that fleet was going to be moving forward. My big goal was moving fleet forward and getting us some recognition on the excellent work we could do.
Well, it seems like it was a good choice for both of them after a 37-year career after that.
And I enjoyed most every day. I told my wife, this job is fun to go to do. This fun is, it's a fun job to be at because I'm working with some excellent people, excellent staff. And when it's no longer fun, it's time to retire. So I stayed there for over 40 years, actually.
And you still haven't been able to fully let go.
No, I haven't, because I do enjoy working with these people. Just yesterday, a fleet manager that was just promoted to the fleet manager, I think with 3 or 4 weeks before our session, came up to me and says, "Boy, can I have your business card? I really need to pick your brain because I need your help." And that made me feel really energized me. It really made me feel good. I gave my business card. You said, "You call me anytime, day or night."
It's the people, and it's a part of this industry. I love watching the amount of collaboration and camaraderie and just willingness to help, to ask and good question and provide advice. It's something that I've seen and a part of why we're having this conversation today too. So on that thread, let's talk some lessons. What are some of the most important lessons that you feel like you've learned in fleet management that are really crucial for some of these new fleet managers to really understand?
Well, the lessons, there's many, many, many again of lessons you learn. There's some of them you just have to listen. You have to listen out there. You have to listen and observe before you jump into any type of conclusion of you know it all, or you don't, you're making a mistake. You don't want to make mistakes. Mistakes happen. They're always going to happen, but you want to be sure you've done your research. The other thing is, I think today's fleet managers, today's fleet professions need to start attending more training sessions, more more conferences, to get the input from others that have years and years more experience than they do, and learn from this. That's what I did. I went to these sessions, many of which I will tell you the city did not, reimburse me for, but I felt it was a learning experience. So I took cash out of my own wallet and went to these, and bringing back these great ideas to these, to the city. Don't be afraid to try something new, but don't try reinventing the wheel continuously. Learn from others. They've already invented the wheel in a certain procedure you're trying to do, and learn from that. Learn from what they did and where their stumbles were as well. And try not to stumble. Again, when I always attended a conference, I was at the conference. I went to every conference, every hour, sat there and listened to people, took many, many, many notes. Back when I first started going, there weren't the PowerPoints and the videos and everything else we have today. There were the people up there speaking. They were speaking from with the little index cards where they had bullet points written, and they were speaking from their heart. Then they graduated to the laminates on an overhead projector, and they drew on with a Sharpie or whatever and drew their little questions and answers out. Then when PowerPoints came along, it made things, much better, much more clear. You could see their points and see their, formulas a little clear. But again, you have to learn. And then you're going to make really good friends at these conferences and acquaintances, and you're going to trade business cards with them, and you want to keep them in your close loop. When you have a question or something, just share it with them. Again, we didn't have emails way back then in the, the early 80s and things, but now we do. We have computers, we have emails, we have video chats, we have Zoom calls. All those are so beneficial. So take advantage of all those lessons you can possibly get. Many of these people are having these lunch and learns now where you can, they have them at noon or whatever, and you bring your lunch, eat your lunch while you're learning things that they're accomplishing. Those are great lessons. And again, if you have a restricted budget dollar wise, they don't usually charge for those. Those are just good things you can do. I also learned lessons learned. I was a type of fleet manager that spent time on the floor. I spent time on the floor every morning. I would go out when the technicians would come on board. I would say good morning to them. And I had an afternoon shift as well. Before I left in the evening, I would say good afternoon to those also. You can get a lot of what's going on your shift by just that good morning or good afternoon, the response you get. If one of them comes back with a type of a tone where there's an issue, I'll make time during the day and maybe we'll take a walk out in the backyard and just talk about it. I had an open door policy. I thought the open door policy worked very well. Everything was confidential. What was said in my office was confidential. And believe me, I listened to a lot of stories, and I'm hoping that I helped some of these individuals make the correct decisions in what they were doing. There's things you have to understand, that they have loved ones at home. They're leaving at home for many hours while they're working for you. And we're in the north, in Michigan, where we do have a thing called snow. We have snow that you have to call people out in the middle of the night. You have to tell people they got to work later. They got to work their Saturdays. They got to work their Sundays. And what is that doing to their home life? So you have to take that into account. I knew most of my employees' wives are significant others. I know most of my employees' children's names also. And I would ask them every once in a while, how are they doing and things like that. And they would share with me how they're doing. Again, that's a buy-in. And I always looked at my employees as somewhat as my extended family. And I treated them as such too also. When their birthdays came up, I kept chart of all their birthdays. I would take a picture. Most of the time, unbeknownst to them, I would take a picture of them working on something. I'd have everybody sign it, happy birthday. I would laminate it and I would put it on their toolbox before they came into work that morning or that afternoon. And that really meant something to them. One of them even told me, this is probably the only birthday card I'll ever get. I said, hey, happy birthday. And that means something. And then we also went further, lessons learned again. It's a team. We're a team. Nothing is I or they, or it's us. We're a team. I would send home a letter of appreciation, usually during the holiday times, not to the employee, but to the family of the employee. So they would open it up and have a picture of them also working on doing something, just explaining we really appreciate everything Doug, Joe, Jim, Greg did for us especially during the last snowstorm. Without their assistance, we would never have been able to keep our equipment on the road, making our city a safe and secure place to live. So those are the kind of things that I've learned. Give them the tools they want. They need special tools. Listen to what they have to say. We had tailgate meetings. We had quarterly potlucks, luncheons. And we were very successful with making sure fleet was a known word throughout the city, that we had a great team on board.
I love it. It's really about being present and just being a part of the, fleet industry and your staff and the world that you're in. I think all of that kind of comes back down to just simply being present.
Yes, and there's a lot of that is so true, that there's a lot of fleet managers. Some of them, they can't help it. I know some fleet managers that have, 3 shifts. They have, 3 different shops spread out throughout their city or their county. And it's tough for them to get out there and meet with all those individuals. But you need to make an effort. You need to make an effort. If you can't do it every day, at least do it once a week or something. Just make contact with those folks. Let them know that you're there and that you're available for them if they need you. I've had technicians come into my office and said, hey, boss, would you mind putting your shop coat on and coming out and taking a look at something with us? We're stumped on this. Now that's telling you that they respect your decision, respect your you're looking at something with them and helping them come up with a fix for something. So I thought that was really great. And I always stopped what I was doing, put my safety glasses on, put my shop coat on, and went out there and even got on a creeper with many of them underneath a piece of equipment. And most times we figured out the solution.
That's from lessons, but what about some rookie mistakes? From your perspective, are there any real rookie mistakes that you're seeing new fleet managers making that they really need to be steering clear of?
Unfortunately, we see that on a lot of our training seminars. They come up to us with some things that they've done. Don't assume you know everything, because you don't. You do not know everything, especially as a rookie. You do not know it all. Ask for some expertise, ask for some help from other people that know a little bit more. Work as a team is very important. You want to work on your weaknesses also. If you have a weakness in, say, it's public speaking, you have a weakness on budgeting, you have a weakness on specification writing, you have people there at the city that can help you. Don't be afraid to go to the public. Don't be afraid to go to the finance director and say, look, this is my first budget I'm putting together. I need a little help and guidance here. Could you help me? And let him be your mentor on that. Same as the purchasing director. If you're writing a specification and you're stumbling on a few things on it, why not go to the purchasing director and ask them, hey, can I have an hour of your time and you can help me, mentor me on putting together a bulletproof specification that is going to both help the city, it's going to help me, and it's going to help you by not spending more time correcting things. So you have to be able to do those types of things. And the big thing also, the rookie mistakes that I see, people in the city, this happens constantly. People in the city, the county, the state government, do they know who the fleet manager is? Have you ever made your presence known to them? Have you ever introduced yourself to them? Have you ever went in and say, hey, can I have 15, 20 minutes of your time? Can we just go over a few things? I want to have a meeting with you to see what fleet can do to help your operation. What can we do for you? If you open that door like that, you'll be surprised at the benefits that you'll have come back your way as well. I've done that. I've helped people out. And then when I get in a jam about something, I need something, I'll go to them and they'll say, Sam, not a problem. When do you need it by? Because they know that you've come to them, you asked them for some input. And now if you need something, they're going to be there for you. Again, don't make enemies. You want to be a good listener. There's a difference between listening and hearing. And you want to be able to listen to what the problems are. That's what I would say. Don't be afraid to ask other fleet managers in the area for help. They're not going to look down on you because of this. They're happy. Most are very happy to spend time with you.
I think to add on to that too, don't be afraid to promote yourself. Don't be afraid when you've got a big win, when you've done something successful, to make sure that it's heard and that it's seen in those communications with public sector and other stakeholders within companies or cities that you might be working with.
One thing I will mention, there's two other things here. When you're ever asked a question at a staff meeting and you don't really have the answer, do not be afraid to say, can I get back with you later today or tomorrow with that answer? I want to give you the exact figures on that, or the exact, possibility, the exact cost, or how long it's going to take. And then when you do set goals, you want to set a goal that's reasonable, has a reasonable timeline. Don't try to be the hero out there and push something through and then have to go back and say, hey, I'm going to need another week or two to get this done. Give them a reasonable goal. And if you give them a goal of 3 weeks, if you come in 2.5 weeks, that's great. But don't come in 4 or 5 weeks. So again, set a goal that is reasonable.
So thinking about what's really worked well in your career, what are some of the best practices or innovations that you found to be really the most effective in managing a successful fleet?
Well, I would say one of our biggest accomplishments was we went from a pencil and paper type work order system to a computerized fleet management program. And there's not many people still in the industry, because this was a long time ago. This was back in probably the mid-90s, I started looking at fleet management programs. And I went to, I think, 3 or 4 years worth of conferences, brought back many, back then, your 5 1/4, your 2.5-inch diskettes that you had to put into your computer and
Yep.
look over these programs. And I narrowed it down. Every year I narrowed it down a little bit more. I went for budget money. I received some budget money, but it wasn't enough because I knew what I really wanted. And it wasn't enough to get what I wanted. I wasn't going to buy a second best program. I wanted the best. And then it ended up, I want to say it was after about 3 or 4 years, we finally got IT online, got the budget people to give us the money we needed. We put together a specification and bought a really, really good fleet management program that to this day they're still using. They just upgraded from Win now to Web, but they're still using it. And I remember it was so frustrating when you were in your office and you had to go back to the file cabinet, the legal size file cabinet, and try to find a file. And then you had to straighten out all the work orders that were missed, that weren't put in there correctly by date, try to straighten them all out.
You Post-it notes in there somewhere.
Yes, Post-it notes, greasy fingerprints, you know how that is. And try to get that all straightened out to put a report together that would have been so easy to pull electronically. So we went down from, I think we had 4 5-drawer file cabinets. When I left there after probably, maybe not, probably after 4 or 5 years, we were down to maybe 2 file cabinets. Then when I left, we were down to 1 file cabinet because we condensed everything to electronic copies. Then we still kept vehicle records, obviously a vehicle jacket with purchase dates and all the material in there, but no more work orders in there. That was a big thing. You get a fleet management program that will help you do your job better, and that will make your fleet, look more impressive on paper as well. Again, purchasing these programs is huge, and it's a big expense. You want to do it one time. You don't want to do it over and over again. But when you're asked to write a report, you want solid data. You don't want, I missed those 3 work orders that I couldn't find, so I missed that data. You want solid data. So you need a program that will do all that. And we were very successful in purchasing a good program. That's what I would say was one of the biggest successes. Then we also went to automated fuel management system at the same time, which was huge. As a fleet management program, it depends on odometer and hour meter readings to be successful, to make it work properly. And you have to buy a program again that will give you that. Again, we spent time on researching the ones we wanted, throwing out the ones that we thought weren't going to do what we wanted to do, and purchasing a fleet fuel management program that worked well with our fleet management program. They talked to each other very nicely. They transferred information correctly. That's what we wanted. That's what we got. And till today, that was back in, I want to say, 99, we did that. And today they're still using those same 2 programs.
That's fantastic. And again, that shows the due diligence that was also put into that, the research, the time, the not just jumping into something, but really making sure, I think, that it's the right tool for the job needed for your specific operation.
And again, Laura, there's fleets around that came to our facility to see what we were doing and how we were doing this. And we were showing them our fleet management program, our fuel management program. And they would bring their public works director along with them. These are fleet managers. And their public works director would ask, well, why doesn't ours do this? And the fleet manager had to say, well, we didn't buy the best program. We bought a program that we could afford at the time. So in turn, some of these fleet managers I know personally, they're on their 2nd or 3rd fleet management program now because, again, it's not always their fault. They're only given X amount of dollars to purchase something, and they're working within their budgets. But that's when being a fleet manager, and I call a good fleet manager, I call them the subject matter experts.
Yep.
You have to stand up in front of this group and say, you're giving me money to buy a, Chevrolet. I need to buy the Buick or Cadillac because we are that type of an operation here. We want to be the best operation. We want something that will grow with us, not that we have to continue to upgrade and purchase all over again and bring all the data back in. We want to be able to get the best and stay with the best.
Yeah, because all those, transfers from one to another, that's data transfer, that's time, and time
Oh,
is money,
yes.
and that definitely makes an impact. We've touched on this in a few different spots, but technology has very clearly come a long way. When I started, I was still trying to convince people to, use Excel as a way of tracking data, and we've come so far from that. Um, how else have you really think it's changed in fleet management, or is there anything else that we haven't really talked on the technology side that has been really game changing to you?
The GPS units you put in your vehicles right now, or we can watch what's going on, talk about what's going on. You get phone calls in the middle of the snowstorm. You get a phone call that you have a vehicle out there and it's starting to overheat, or the ABS light has come on. So you're getting real live data where it's actually, you don't have to go out there and try to make this thing happen again. It's happening right in front of your eyes. You're seeing this happen. All your data modules, are out there right now, that when a vehicle drives into the shop, it picks up a lot of the information. Now it picks up the odometer readings. It picks up when's the next oil change or PM due for this piece of equipment. There's so much technology out there. These cars are loaded with it. And again, that's where it comes to training again. If you don't train your people on how to read this technology or operate this technology or use diagnostic tools to pull this technology out, you're not going to be very successful, because there's a lot of folks that we've spoken with in the last year that just don't have the ability to do this. They're not given budgets for training their individuals on how to do this. And they're falling further and further behind. And you're starting to see them send vehicles out to the dealer to be corrected. When you do that, you have additional downtime. Vehicles aren't available. And that's not what you want to do. You want to be a one-stop shop where you can do it all. But technology is huge. It's huge right now. It's everything you do is amazing. All the wireless connections right now, it's when they drive into the yard, they're coming into your yard. They pass through your gates. You know what time they came in your gates. You know who was driving at the time, because there's pictures of that as well. They go to your fuel pumps. Our fuel pumps islands were the technology we had on there was radio frequency. So all the operator had to do is remove the pump handle from the pump, put it into the tank, remove it from the tank, and put it back into the gas pump, and everything was recorded. The odometer was recorded. How fast the vehicle went was recorded. How many times it was started, how much idle time. That was all recorded automatically, where you didn't have that before. This is all great stuff.
So, one of the big parts of fleet management that I really feel like people miss is that it's about a lot more than the vehicles. There's a lot of leadership that's a part of this that needs to be kind of taken into consideration as you're growing. What strategies have you used to really build and lead your successful teams over the years?
Well, again, it's you want you I've always believed in I try to promote from within when we have openings. And again, strategies are bringing training into our facility to help train not only in mechanics or technicians training, but in everything. I mean, training how to be a good leader, how to lead by example, what ethical training, how to, make sure your ethics are on top of the whole scheme of things. Don't get yourself caught into something that's going to embarrass you or embarrass your family, embarrass our operation. But, leadership skills, speaking with attorneys, we had attorneys come in and enlightened our individuals on, when you make a repair to a vehicle, when you're talking about something the city is doing, this could all be being recorded. It could be documented on paper, and you are responsible for what you're doing while you're here at the city or the county. So if a vehicle goes out the door, wasn't put together properly, and you released it, the technician released it to go out the door, and the supervisor released it to go out the door, now you've assumed responsibility that this vehicle was put together correctly. If it's involved in an accident, you could be brought into that situation where you're going to have to represent yourself, and why you did it, how you did it, and when you did it. Was it done correctly? Again, that's what we try to teach. We try to teach leadership. We put people in lead roles when supervisors would go off on vacation. We brought somebody from the floor up to be a leader at that time, and they would run the shift. We would give them help. We would give them guidance. What I asked of all my direct reports was to give me, I wanted something where it instructed a person how to respond and how to react to certain things. When you walked into the door in the morning, what lights to turn on, what doors to open, how to assign work orders, things like that. It was a guide for them. Even had points in it where when you're working on a computer, it asks you a certain question, it would tell you what keystrokes to more or less do. So it was a guide that they could follow and they learn from. Because when you want to promote from within, you know you're going to watch these people grow with this stuff, and you want to make the correct decision, because once you make that decision to promote somebody to a supervisor's position, again, you want to make the correct decision. That's correct for not only the operation, but for you to be able to make them continue to grow and help them grow and represent the fleet.
I love that idea. That is such a great way to give people a chance and give them an opportunity to experience it, as well as see how they perform in that situation. That's a really neat idea. Keeping a team motivated, it's absolutely no small feat. Keeping them going every day. You've mentioned a few things in our call about how you really connected with your team, and helped create that culture. How else did you work to manage and keep your team really engaged and inspired every day to come in and do their best?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with many things, really. A lot of it had to do with recognition. We would obviously go for the top 100 fleet award or the leading fleet award offered by the different companies, either by NAFA or by government fleet out there. And when we would do that, the first time we went for it, I think we came in number 10th. And I would bring back, we do the application, we write the application out, I bring it back and I show everybody what we've done. And some of the technicians would say, you forgot, boss, you forgot about this. I go, you're right. I did forget about this. So now it's not my application. It's not the city's application. It's our application as a team. So we would do that. And we got 10th place. The following year, we got, I think, third place the following year. And I say, hey, we're on a roll here, folks. We're doing great things. And again, they would go to these training seminars and they would bring back great ideas. And we would make our availability. We go from maybe 88% availability to 90% availability because of things that they brought to the table as well. And they knew what the goal was. They knew 95 was our goal. And we were going to get to 95, they said. I said, I know we are, but we're going to do it together. So one year we got third place. That was great. The next year we went to the competition. We got second place. I said, hey, we're right on the edge, folks. We got to do something better here. But you have to remember there's other people out there watching what we're doing, and they're in the same ballpark as we are. And it might be a different game right now. So we went to one and we're sitting there and you're all sitting at your table, and they called the city of Troy as number 18th. So we went from second to 18th. So now you have to go back to your group of, technicians and to city management, because they were all expected. Hey, you were second last year, and they made a big thing of it. The city management always made a big thing about us on our awards, but now you're 18th. And you went back there and said, look, people are catching up to us. We need to step it up here. We need to, do something spectacular here. And that's when we brought in some different items and different things. We started insourcing, bringing other fleets into our operation. Other municipalities were bringing their vehicles to us because they had budget cuts. They were letting people go. They couldn't repair their vehicles. So we brought in these other municipalities. It was a hard sell. Our technicians understood it, but other people in the city said, well, you're working on so-and-so's vehicle right now. How come you're doing that? I said, well, it's because we call this insourcing. We're bringing in additional funds to our operation. We're, using our facility to 100% its capacity. I think it's a good thing to do. We're helping other municipalities out. And besides that, you live in that municipality. We're making sure their vehicles are going to be ready to serve you. So we went to the conference, did our homework, did an excellent application. We thought everybody looked at it and agreed it was one of the best. And we sat there, and I'll remember to this day that when they start calling the names off, And I'm sitting there, okay, we had 18th last year. What are we getting this year? It got down to the top 2 applications, or top 2. That's when they would do it, number 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, whatever. The top 2, and I was sitting across the table from John Hunt, who was sitting at the same table with me. And we're looking at each other, and our wives were there also. And we're looking at each other and going, oh boy, here we go, guys. And they called Portland, Oregon as number 2, and we were number 1. And we were both so proud of each other because we've advanced so much. My first phone call I made was back to my crew that evening and told them, I think we were in San Diego, I believe. San Diego or Denver, I'm not sure, can't remember for sure, but that we were the number 1 fleet. And it was the same night there was a council meeting going on, and I called the public works director, who I knew was at the council meeting, and let him know that we were chosen number 1. After I told my crew first. And he said, that was great. Well, when we got the trophy 2 weeks later, I had the whole fleet department went to the city council meeting, and the mayor came up and gave me she'd made a nice little presentation, how proud they were of us and everything else, gave us presented the award to us. Well, I told her not to present the award to me. This was a team effort. Present it to our technicians, please, and our supervisors.
That's awesome.
And we also did other things. We had a challenge coin. We put together a challenge coin. It had, our 4 pillars that we stood for on it. And they kept that in their pocket or on their toolbox. And they could lose that challenge coin just as easy as they got it if they didn't stand up to that. We bought them all polo shirts. So when we did go to city council, which we were there quite often for getting awards, they would wear their polo shirts. When they went to conferences, they wore polo shirts to the conferences to represent the city. And they knew that was a big plus for them. We did some ASE stuff. We were the first ASE. We were the only ASE Blue Seal Shop municipal garage in the state of Michigan for years. And our mayor knew about this, and she would always use it in her State of the City address. And our people would I made sure that our people knew about that, and I got the press release and made sure they got it. Our people were in the newspaper. It wasn't me in the newspaper. It was our technicians in the newspaper. They deserve the recognition. And they all really liked all that.
What other advice would you give to new entrants and new people coming into our fantastic industry today?
That's a tough question. Today, they have so much going on. I would say there's several things. I'm just going to, just some bullet points, I guess I would say, to concentrate on. I would say, you want to be a good listener. Just don't come in there. Even if you were a fleet manager from another fleet, you're coming into this other city or county to come work. You want to listen to your technicians, your supervisors, and your customers. Who are your customers? We had many, many customers. We had 15 different departments underneath us that we provided them vehicles for. Plus, we had up at one time 15 in-source cities and counties that we did work for. So you want to listen to those people and make sure they understand where you're going, what you're up against, what your plans are for the future. I think a lot of people don't do that. They come in with, I don't want to say an iron fist anymore, but they come in with, this is the way that the highway, and that's not going to work. I would also recommend coming in and interviewing each individual that's in your fleet division, and ask them some questions, get to understand them better, so they can talk to you one-on-one, not with a crowd around. And I always ask them, what if you had to change one thing, what would you change about today's fleet operation here? And there you learn a lot of things, because they would tell you, well, we never felt appreciated. We never felt that they were listening to things that we wanted to do. They wouldn't listen to the type of tools we needed. They wouldn't, when they do a promotion, they're doing a promotion because that was their buddy or something. You want to get those things out in the open right now, and so you don't go down that road as well. I always, believed in, joining fleet organizations. If there's a fleet organization in your region or in your area, get involved with it. If there isn't one, there was not one when I took over as a fleet manager, as a young mid-20s fleet manager. So I started one. I started a fleet organization. I went to these other municipalities, got a hold of their public works directors and or their fleet people and say, hey, would you mind coming to a meeting on this day at our facility so we can, introduce each other, get introduced to each other. We had 12 cities show up for the first meeting. That was back in 1983. And to this day, that organization is still going. And I think that's really key. Again, we came in, we talked about different things. We bring in guest speakers. There was no dues, no payment of any sort, just showing up and talking about problems, bringing problems you have, sharing solutions is the big thing. We would definitely, I think when you come into a fleet, you definitely want to look at, do you have a business plan? Do you have a mission statement? Do you have a service level agreement with these other departments that you're supposed to be living up to that you might not be living up to? Maybe that's part of the problem, why the other person isn't there any longer and you're there now. So you might want to make sure you're looking at all that stuff. Do you understand the purchasing policies of the city? Do you understand the budget? What's in your budget? Do you understand what your spending limitations are? You want to look at all those things. I thought it was really important. It's not just your team that you're working with, but who's your support for your team. I always included our vendors. Our vendors were a big part of our success story because our vendors can make it or break it for you. If they say they're going to deliver a part and it doesn't come, well, now you have to go back to the department and say, we're going to have to wait a few days. The parts didn't come in and when it was as expected. So our vendors were a huge part of our team. They not only bought, our parts, our part vendors, but our vendors that had supplies for us, our fuel vendors, and then the people we bought equipment from. The people we bought equipment from were huge. When they said, you're going to have your vehicle in, 60 to 90 days, and pretty soon it's 180 days. Well, we have a problem. We have a problem. And I mentioned the challenge coin that we put together for our fleet. We had some vendors that went above and beyond for us in the middle of snowstorms. They would open their doors on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and have somebody there where we could go and get a part that we needed to get our vehicle back on the road, a non-stock part, get our vehicle back on the road. When we had our parties, our quarterly potlucks, we invited those vendors to our potlucks and we presented them with a challenge coin saying, hey, you went the extra yard for us. These are our 4 pillars that we lived with. We're giving you this because you were there for us. Now, the next time you had an issue or a need for something from that vendor, what do you think was going to happen? They were part of your team. They were part of your success story. So again, and we made sure they got recognition for it as well. We would get phone calls from other municipalities. Hey, you're dealing with XYZ vendor. How are they doing for you? If they were one of our vendors that went above and beyond, we made sure we let them know that. So again, it's a two-way street and they were there for us. And again, we wouldn't be a number one fleet if we didn't have people that assisted us to get there.
It's all about those relationships, both with your staff,
Yes,
your employees, the industry as a whole. It's the relationships.
And as far as the fleet manager, our portion of it, when we do assessments out there and we do consulting out there, when you talk to a fleet manager that's very abrupt, are you going to feel comfortable talking to that person? You have to be approachable. You have to be approachable and be a good listener. And let's work the solution, I've told people forever and ever, don't just bring me your problems, bring me solutions to your problems, because if you don't have a solution, let's sit down, let's make some time, let's sit down together and come up with a solution that we all can live with. Because if I just give you the solution, this is it, this is what we're doing, is that going to be as accepted as, no, this is what the 3 of us worked out and this is where we feel we need to go with this. So again, a good listener, be approachable. Don't be abrupt with people. Don't show favoritism out there on the shop floor with, any of the vendors. You're very ethical. You do things above board and, make sure everybody can come to work safely and go home safely. That was one of my big goals was before I retired. One of my big goals was before I retired, I didn't want to ever have to go to a hospital to see one of my employees that was in a hospital and or attend a funeral for one of my employees where maybe something happened at work that caused this, it caused an injury or caused the death of an employee. And I was very, very, very fortunate to, when I walked out of there after 40 some years, I never had to do that.
Sam, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your incredible journey, your absolutely invaluable insights with us today. Absolutely thank you beyond thank you.
Well, thank you for having me today. And hopefully this will help some fleet managers that, are maybe struggling, and they're always more than welcome to give us a phone call, give me a phone call, and I'll be happy to guide them or lead them or just listen to them.
We'll drop your website link in. It's conversations like this that remind us why preserving and passing down this knowledge is absolutely so critical for the future of fleet management. To everybody who's watching, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What stood out to you? Who else should we spotlight in the future for episodes of Fleet Legends? Drop your comments below. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and stay tuned for more wisdom and inspiration coming your way soon.